back to the Power 2 here on College Football Addiction. We have now seen 2 college football playoff rankings releases. I don't know that we're necessarily talking about that, but we are going to talk about some games that will certainly impact next week's rankings and then ultimately what will happen when we get to Selection Sunday. Boys, how you doing?
Doing fantastic. I am in Orlando, Florida. I am contractually obligated to tell you that I am coming from the home of wrestling stars Steve Macklin and Deanna Purrazzo. Macklin, a former TNA world champion, 2-time TNA international champion. Deanna Purrazzo, 3-time TNA knockouts world champion, former Reina de Reinas champion in AAA Lucha Libre in Mexico, and former Ring of Honor women's champion. I'm obligated to promote their podcast, Boots to Boots, which is available wherever you get your podcast. And I do have to say, as of this morning, thanks to Cole Thompson on social media and him buzzing me last night about a great game between Western Michigan and Ohio U, I am now technically best friends with Chase Daniel. That is binding. And I did already have, for some reason, an away Chase Daniel Mizzou jersey hanging in my closet. Had I not been traveling from Nashville to Orlando today, I would have been wearing that jersey for the first time ever right here on the Power 2. Why did I buy it? Because it was available for $16 on Etsy, and I loved Chase Daniel at Mizzou. The man made $41.5 million in the NFL basically holding the clipboard. So I'm having a great morning.
There's nothing better in the NFL. There's nothing better in the NFL than being a long journeyman backup quarterback. Him, Colt McCoy, legends of the Big 12, legends of holding a clipboard. I'm very happy to announce, ladies and gentlemen, we have off-season content bleeding out the eyeballs that we cannot share with you today, but we did come up with a couple of things before we got on the pre-show.
It's coming.
So I promise you, if you have not hit subscribe, you have not hit the like button, you've not hit the ring notification, if you don't do it for the regular season, by golly, you better do it for the fucking off season. My apologies for that. Still, there's way too much stuff that we have that is going to be awesome in the off season.
Go ahead.
If you don't love the Power 2 in March, you don't love us in October. I'll say that.
I am more excited about the offseason idea that we just had than I am. Listen, I'm sorry for these 12 teams, any of these games that we're talking about today. Speaking of backup journeyman quarterbacks, my boy's starting against Green Bay on Sunday. And I know Jameis is like the funny, everyone just likes the virality and meme stuff. Like Jameis's character arc has taken an insane turn to where even like UF fans are in my mentions like, all right, I love this guy. This guy's incredible. But he's made a lot of money in the NFL now going on more than a decade. And listen, I don't think he could play well enough to really get a starting job, but he could go somewhere and be a really good backup next year if he plays well enough over these next several weeks. So
can I be honest? I'm very sick and tired of seeing all these athletes come out with their podcasts and saying, oh, listen to my podcast. You got to go stay locked in. I would pay an abhorrent amount of money to listen to a Jameis Winston.
Yes. That
would be a religious experience every single week. Like RG3 doing his stuff. No, give me famous Jameis. That's all I need.
Go look at his, obviously it doesn't compare to when Trump went on, but go look at the Theo Vaughn numbers for when Jameis was on, and then go look at the Sunday Scoops numbers when he was on, and the Big Cat numbers when he was on. And he did all those back to back to back. It wasn't even he's saying something new. But he always just says something new. Yeah, his podcast would go berserk. I would
watch that religiously.
He needs to go on the again, it won't do the Taylor numbers. He needs to go on with the Kelsey brothers. He needs to come on with us. Let's be honest. But
let's get him on here.
Yeah, Jason Kelsey. Give me him right here on Power 2.
Yeah.
I'll call it the Power 4 if that means we get famous Jameis on.
We'll call it the Power 1. It'll just be Jameis.
Yeah, we'll call it the Power 5. We'll call it 5 just for him. It won't make any sense mathematically, but we'll do it.
The Power 19 for his number.
Okay. Something like that. I don't know.
We've done a lot of wild cards at the end of shows. We're going to do a fun one right now. There are a lot of games that impact the college football playoff, and so we can't get to all of them. And we are going to build 5-team parlays. We're all just going to go around the horn and build a 5-team parlay, picking games quickly that don't that don't make our rundown today. So you can see the rundown there, right? Pitt-Notre Dame, Bama-Oklahoma, UGA-Texas, the Lane Kiffin Bowl, Florida and Ole Miss. What's on there? Duke, Virginia. That's a hilarious game to have on here, but we do have it. And then BYU TCU. So 5-game parlays. I literally just have the ESPN. And listen, if you guys want to pick games that don't matter, that's fine. But I'm trying to do games that do have some relevance. So I'll go first, and then we'll go around the horn really quick. Give me Louisville to win at home against Clemson on Friday night. We can also overpick. Like you can pick things that are already been picked on this. Give me NC State to upset Miami. I think CJ Bailey could go absolutely berserk in that game. So give me them. This is crazy. And I don't know if I really believe this, but I wanted to have 2 dogs in this. Give me Iowa to go on the road and upset USC this weekend. I am hoping for that, just for reasons we may get to later, reasons we may not. Yeah, we will in our first segment get to why that one matters. This doesn't impact the playoff, but I will take Florida State to win this week at home. So give me FSU. And lastly, give me I'll take Utah to beat Baylor, but I'll take Baylor with the points. That's not part of the game. Spreads are not relevant in this, but give me Baylor to keep it really close with Utah in that one. So who's next?
Okay.
Cole, after you. Go ahead.
I'll just start off where TJ picked up. I got Baylor upsetting Utah.
See, I just wasn't bold enough to do 3 dogs.
To keep that alive. Let's go to the Sun Belt, where there is a team that you have to be paying attention to. I got James Madison getting a win over App State. They keep their slim playoff hopes alive. I am going to follow in the same footsteps as TJ and take NC State to upset Miami. I do think that TJ Bailey will have a day. Dave Duran needs this one to guarantee that he is back for 2026. So that's going to be pretty big. I'm also going to take Georgia Tech to get a win in their matchup over Boston College. And just to stir the pot to start off the show, you were supposed to be a national championship contender. Tom, Penn State's not going bowling because Michigan State gets a must-win game at home. East Lansing rolls. Jonathan Smith keeps his job live.
Milivojevic, however you pronounce his freaking last name, got sacked 7 times 2 weeks ago by Minnesota. How do you think this is going to go against a Penn State team that actually put Mendoza on his butt multiple times this last weekend? All right,
they lost all momentum as Omar Cooper's toe touched the end zone.
Oh, give me a break. Okay, so I'm going to keep this one all Big Ten because there are some interesting matchups. They're just not sexy. Minnesota at Oregon. 6-3 versus 8-1. I think I'm genuinely surprised. I hadn't followed a ton of Minnesota this year. The fact that they're 6-3 is very PJ Fleck of them, but I still will take Oregon at home. They've shown a lot of different ways that they can win. They're dealing with some injuries, but I think Oregon and Dan Lanning take care of business. Boy, what a test for Indiana. 10-0 hosting 3-6 Wisconsin. I wonder if they'll be able to pull that one out. Legitimately interested in number 18 Michigan versus Northwestern, 7-2 against 5-4. Important game for Michigan because they do need to win out to make the college football playoff. The game is on the road at Wrigley, so fun environment. Northwestern technically hosting, Michigan on the road. That should have a big fight feel, so I'm excited for that one. I do agree with TJ. I like Iowa to upset USC on the road. I think that's set up very well for the Hawkeyes. Can they hang enough points on them? We'll see. I think Penn State gets their first Big Ten and Power 4 win of the season. I know the old adage that, you are what your record says you are. Just because both these teams are 3-6 does not mean they are the same. I think Penn State figured out some stuff against Indiana, and Michigan State not exactly in a good position. I think Penn State is trending in the right direction. Michigan State is not. Elsewhere within the Big Ten, Boy, it's just some real slobberknockers. 4-5 Maryland at 6-3 Illinois. I guess if Illinois wants to remain competitive in the race for the college football playoff, or at least for a good bowl game, they've got to win out, and they could potentially get themselves to 9-3. Purdue 2-8 at 6-3 Washington. Boy, that's a tough one. And then 3-6 UCLA against the number one team in the country, Ohio State. So some real tests there in the Big Ten. But screw you, Cole. Penn State will win this week.
Bias just is so strong right now.
Here was the thing that was really upsetting is going through Michigan State. Michigan State actually has a Power 4 win on their schedule this year. They beat Boston College. Penn State does not have a Power 4 win. Yep. It's embarrassing. Mm-hmm.
Is Boston College really a Power 4 win this year?
I don't know. What's up, Trevor?
Okay, Tom, we'll move on to our first segment here. Because we're not covering it, do you want to make a pick in the NC State-Miami game just because Cole and I both did? Do you want to make that a trifecta, or do you trust Carson Beck at home?
I do not trust Mario Cristobal with my laundry. I think I will take NC State.
On to a game that does not matter if you are Pat Narduzzi. Pitt versus Notre Dame. Is there a real chance that Notre Dame could play themselves out of the college? I mean, obviously there's a real chance. Yeah, if they lose, they're not in. But is that realistic? Could Pitt actually win this game against Notre Dame? Who wants to start?
I mean, they could, but I know that everybody is knocking Notre Dame, saying their schedule has not been very challenging. The first two games of the season, I would completely disagree with that. At least the early speculation of what Miami looked like. Like, Miami did look good. I think we have to admit that. The first, month and a half of the season, that looked like a very good team. At points, we were saying the most complete team in the country. And the loss at home against what I would say is the best team in college football in Texas A&M earlier on in the season, 41-40. Like, Notre Dame has had those tough losses. Yes. The rest of their schedule, their wins, little suspect. They've had plenty of blowouts. And then the game against the aforementioned Boston College Eagles on the road in BC, head scratcher. Pitt has everything to gain. Notre Dame has everything to lose. I think there's a big portion of college football fans that do not want to see Notre Dame in the college football playoff. Pitt has shown the ability to hang in there, hang tough in games like this all season long. Having College Game Day there, there's some extra fire behind it. But I still think Notre Dame is going to pull this thing out. What Pat Narduzzi said was profoundly stupid. And it comes from a person who profoundly says stupid things all the time. This guy loves to poke the bear, poke the hornet's nest, whatever you want to call it. And I think he's just trying to get attention. But for him to reasonably sit there and say, well, if this was an ACC game, yeah, I'd be worried about it, but we can lose this 100-3. It doesn't matter. It absolutely matters. Everybody and their brother is talking about how the ACC might not have any representation in the college football playoff. I don't care that it's a non-conference game. Pitt and every ACC team basically cannot afford to lose the rest of the season. Teams will inevitably lose. But if Pitt wants to make an argument for themselves and make their case to be in the college football playoffs somehow, yeah, you need to beat Notre Dame. For him to say, oh, this doesn't matter, this is our non-conference schedule. There's an old adage amongst Penn State fans. If you can't get into college, go to Pitt. If you don't make any sense, be the head coach at Pitt. Pat Narduzzi's a friggin' idiot.
He was incredibly honest. I'll say that.
He was honest. It doesn't make him right. He's just stupid.
Yes.
It's bad. No, I mean, for me, what I look at is Pitt, do you guys know, maybe has the most control of any college football contender for the playoff? Because if they hold the fate of 4 different teams' hands in their own liking, including their own. So think about this for a second. Let's say that they end up winning against Notre Dame. Well, Notre Dame is now 9-3. They're going to be out of the college football playoff because they don't have a conference victory to be able to go and use that as an advantage. What happens in 2 weeks? I mean, what happens next week? They face off against Georgia Tech in Atlanta. If they beat Georgia Tech in Atlanta, well, Georgia Tech may still be able to go to the conference championship, but you have to have a lot more chaos occur to guarantee their spot in the playoff. And then who do they close out the season with? Miami on their home turf. if they beat Miami, Miami's in such an interesting spot. The thing that we learned last night in the college football playoff selection committee process, they may be able just to get on in as an at-large bid and not have to worry about playing in Atlanta because if they have 2 conference losses and there's other teams that rank behind them that would go to Charlotte, play in that matchup, lose that game, and they'd already be locked in at the number 10 spot or the number 11 spot because you can't move them down if they don't play in a game that doesn't matter anymore for them. So they end up losing that game and they win this weekend. Well, then Miami's out of the college football playoff scenario. And then let's just say once and lo and behold that they end up winning out and they go play in the ACC title game. They're 10-2. They go to the college football playoff as the ACC representative. But what if they lose that game? And now they're sitting at 10-3 and it's Duke that wins the ACC. Well, now JMU, they have an argument to maybe get on into the college football playoff. And so they hold so many cards, I think, in the grand scheme of what we know about the college football playoff that not enough people are talking about. Pitt may end up being the most dangerous team if they win this weekend against Notre Dame. Now, how do they beat Notre Dame? Number one, you got to slow down the rushing attack. I mean, Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price, it's the best 1-2 combination in all of college football. If you don't believe me, look at the numbers. They have a combined 22 total touchdowns. They're averaging 6.3 yards a play. They have a combined 14-plus 100 yards on the season. They know how to make situations work in their favor. You got to be able to slow down this rushing attack, and nobody's really been able to do that outside of Miami. I'm not sure that you're the team that's going to be able to accomplish that. The other thing is that I think you got to take a lot of pressure off of Mason Heischel, the quarterback that replaced Eli Holstein. He's been good in a lot of ways. He still is very turnover prone. The problem is that with Eli Holstein, you kind of expected him to be more of a seasoned vet because of what he was able to accomplish last year. Heischel gets kind of a little bit of a pressing concern because of he's a freshman. But this is a secondary that can make plays. They can put you in a position of misery. They can absolutely go ahead and win their one-on-one battles against wide receivers. And that ends up kind of making you have to run the football. This is not a team that runs the football extremely well. They're averaging 3.7 yards a play. They don't have a legit lead running back. Ja'Kian Turner and Julius Goff have kind of taken on over with Desmond Reed being sidelined with an injury. So it'll be interesting to see how this team ends up being able to trust what they can do on the ground. You got to find the way to get the ball into the hands of Raphael Williams and Kenny Johnson. And you probably got to do it on early downs because one of the best things about Notre Dame is they are one of the elite third down defenses in college football. If you can go ahead and win on second and short, you avoid probably having the house call on you if you're a young quarterback. And I think that's really what's going to determine this game for a team like Pitt.
I think what I look at in this matchup is Pitt's run defense, which is good against the competition they've played. And I don't want to minimize that so much because, let's be honest, outside of their first 2 games, Notre Dame hasn't played a good defense either. And Love and Price, and like the Love has been very good. I don't want to take anything away from him, but what defense has he really put yards up against? Pitt has been good against the run this year. Like they're one of the better teams against the run. However, when they've played an offense and a rushing attack that is above average to good, they gave up 170 yards to a Florida State team that I don't think is great, but does have a good rushing attack at times. Very little of that came against Thomas Castellanos. A lot of it, I think he had 12 yards. Sack adjusted, and if you take away a double-digit yard loss that they had on trying to kind of run a reverse that didn't work out to a wide receiver, I mean, you gave up almost 200 yards to FSU on the ground. If Notre Dame's able to replicate that at all, I think they run away with this thing. If you're somehow able to limit what Notre Dame wants to do on the ground, I think Pitt will have a great chance in this. I don't foresee it going down that way. I think Notre Dame will do kind of whatever they want. And I don't know. I don't think that what Narduzzi said really bleeds into the team. I'm sure he's saying things behind the scenes and trying to get them hyped up and amped up. But is there a scenario where Pitt uses this game to prepare for the next 2 weeks? Because he's not wrong. They could lose this game. And as long as they win the next 2 and win the ACC, they're in good shape. And they have 2 very tough games coming up with Georgia Tech and Miami. And then they'll have a tough one in the ACC championship. He needs to go 3-0 after this Notre Dame game. So is there a chance he uses this more so as a preparation for those 2 and sells it to his players like, hey guys, the result of this really doesn't matter. We're going to use this as not a scrimmage, but kind of a live practice to be ready for the next 2. If that's the case, that sucks for college football in general, but I wonder how invested they really are when their head coach is coming out and saying this game doesn't matter. So I don't know, man. I'm sure they want to win. I'm sure they want to beat Notre Dame. You always want to take down a top 10 team when you have that opportunity. And these kids are not going to like take plays off because of that. But even if they are fully invested, I don't know that I see them beating Notre Dame this weekend.
Yeah, I don't see them winning. I think I would take a first half under for sure. I think this will be competitive for a little while, but I understand his point that yes, mathematically they could lose this game and still be in the hunt for the ACC championship. But the College Football Playoff Committee and the general vibe around the playoffs so far this year is that if anybody in the ACC or Big 12 gives reasonable doubt, they will take it. Losing to number 9 Notre Dame at home in potentially significant fashion, because I think we should entertain the possibility that Notre Dame could blow the doors off of Pitt. They do have that high-end capability. Then honestly, it's like, yeah, if you don't make the ACC championship game and you don't beat number 16 Georgia Tech on the road and you don't beat number 15 Miami at home, like those are tough games to end the season. This is a situation where you can hurt your overall perception. And it just adds to the stuff that Pat Narduzzi has done for years. It feels like a small child trying to instigate a fight with an adult sometimes, the way that he's swinging at the bigger conferences, at the bigger programs. As a Penn State guy, he's tried to instigate a rivalry with Penn State for years that Penn State doesn't need. And then going at Notre Dame, there's got to be a lot of kids on this Pitt team that wanted to go to Notre Dame, that wanted to go to Penn State, that wanted to go to all these bigger programs. Ohio State is literally right next door. So I understand his point, and mathematically he is accurate. But I think we all have to acknowledge that the math does not matter with the college football playoff. It's so subjective. If you lose this game, like, what's the best win on Pitt's resume? Is it at 25 Florida State?
They're just trying. I mean, it would be one of the next two for sure. But like, they're just trying. He's just trying to get the auto bid. Like, that's all he wants is the auto bid.
Yeah, but you got to win out, and you got to win the ACC championship to do that. I don't know if they get out of this final 3 stretch 1 and 2.
Right. I mean, they very realistically could go 0-3.
I hate that mentality. That's just the bottom line. It doesn't matter
because we love football.
But that's not even it. The point is that this is why I hated the expansion of the college football playoff, because of what you said, is that this game doesn't matter. Well, it does matter. It does matter because if you get to be the reason why Notre Dame is not going to the playoff, you get to be the reason why you are starting to get people to buy into what you guys are producing. You get to be the reason why the potentially Asher Stadium, if all things go according to plan, could maybe even be a sold out crowd, because if you're hosting a playoff game, like, all these things are supposed to matter. And instead you're coming out of here and saying, well, you know what? Because it's not a conference game. Is it really that big of a deal? Yes, it's that big of a deal. In years past, losing a game felt like you were on life support. And teams like Alabama and teams like Texas and teams like, we could throw in, I'd go even as far as say Florida State, or we can go as far as say, an Ole Miss losing to Georgia. They're playing with they're playing with fire the rest of the season. And you're sitting out here saying, oh, well, it doesn't really matter because of as long as we do our part against the 2 games that we're supposed to win, then we're in a good spot. That's a loser mentality. That always is a loser mentality. I hate the fact that Notre Dame doesn't play in a conference, and I do think that they will find a way to screw things up, but I just don't see it against Pitt. I think that Notre Dame's going to win this game. I think Notre Dame's going to win this game pretty soundly, because of when you go in with that loser mentality, loser results show up on the field.
Can I just make a college football playoff point? And I understand you had to get all the conferences to buy in, and so maybe this is throwing a bone to the group of 6. I don't know that we need auto bids. I don't know. Like, if you win the SEC, you're going to be ranked in the top. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're going to be ranked high enough to get it. If you win the Big Ten, you're going to be ranked high enough to get it. And so it doesn't matter for those conferences. I mean, did we really need Clemson in last year? Like, do we really need to entertain the possibility of a Louisville or Virginia getting in this year? Like, do we need to entertain the possibility? Like, and there's a chance that, I mean, Duke does win this thing. We'll talk about Duke in a minute, but like,
Duke's not going if they win.
But like, yeah, like, you could have, I mean, that would be the ultimate chaos scenario and be phenomenal. But like, I don't know that we need auto bids. That's my hot take on this. And that would end this stupid, idea of the games not mattering. Because, yeah, if Pitt goes out and wins the next 3 after losing this one by 100, they will get in with the auto bid. But I think that's stupid, and I don't think they should. So
the problem, though, is, and this is where, unfortunately, we come back to it, then we're going to have people who don't look at the power too and say, well, you're not showing favoritism to us. We're not showing favoritism to you because you didn't do enough to prove that you belonged in the same conversation. Like, I mean, like, what do you want? Like, you can't say in one hand, oh, the ACC is such a cluster mess and we don't deserve to have a team in there. And then on the next hand say, well, we deserve to have 3 Big 12 teams in there when they all go 10-3 at the end of the year. Like, you can't do that. That's just the bottom line. So either suck it up and accept the fact that you may not get in every season, and it may end up being the SEC and the Big Ten, or accept the auto bid and realize that you're going to have several underwhelming teams always go to the playoff each year.
Tom, you got a score on this one?
I don't. I'm excited to move on to an actual game that matters in Bama and Oklahoma, but I'd take Notre Dame to win and cover.
Yeah, I like Notre Dame 38-24. So on to a game that does matter. Pat Narduzzi will have no impact on this one. Alabama and Oklahoma. Cole, I'll let you start, but I think this is a tricky spot for Alabama. They're fine for a college football playoff spot. They can lose this game, and as long as they win their last 2, I think they're fine. But I just think defensively, the way that they match up with Oklahoma and really Bama's lackluster offense the last couple of weeks has, well, I know they had the bye in there, but their offense has not, it seems to maybe have cooled, and going up against the best defense in the SEC, I think this is a tricky spot for them.
I am an Alabama grad, and I will tell you straight up, I am very nervous for this game. In fact, I am so nervous, I will go as far to say outside of Ohio State in the college football playoff, this may be Alabama's toughest game that they face off against all year. Because if they have not gone up against the defensive line built like Oklahoma, they have not gone up against a pass rush built like Oklahoma, they have not gone up against a team that is able to force the issue and make you one-dimensional as an offense the way that Oklahoma has against multiple opponents. So what are the keys for Oklahoma to win this football game? Number one, I think the major element is force Alabama to run the football. Play press man coverage at the line of scrimmage because Alabama can't run the football to save its bleeping life right now. And the problem is that we're not just looking at last week's game where they lost and they had Daniel Hill be the leading rusher against LSU. Outside of really 2 games, the Mizzou game and I would say the Vanderbilt game, Alabama has not been able to run the football all season. And it's not like we can say, oh, well, they just work on this, this, and this. They'll figure things out. It's week 12. This is who you are as an offense. There's nothing to change. This is what you're accomplishing, and this is what you're known as. So how do you work around it? If you're Oklahoma, you make sure that that is the only way that Alabama is able to win this game. In between the trenches, they're able to push forward on third down with the rushing attack of Jam Miller and Daniel Hill. They're able to go ahead and utilize Ty Simpson's legs. And honestly, that probably is not going to be in favor of the Crimson Tide because this is one of the best run defenses in the country. The other thing is, I think that you're going to have to trust what you have seen from Xavier Robinson as your leading rusher to continue his pathway. Alabama's weak point on the defense still has been the inability to stop the run. It's gotten better week by week, but they still have had several performances where the running attack has been their Achilles heel, and it's allowed teams to hang around a little bit too close for comfort. Xavier Robinson, the narrative of that Oklahoma can't run the football is kind of an outlier and a joke at this point because they've had 3 straight 100-yard rushing performances from a running back, whether that be Torrey Blaylock against South Carolina, the game against Tennessee, the game against Ole Miss. They've been able to run the football more efficiently. So can you trust this to be, once again, an element that ends up benefiting you and trusting that this is where you can go ahead and set up John Mateer in the passing attack? Number 3, you got to get the ball into Isaiah Satenga's hands. And the other player that I'm looking at is Jared Kanik, the tight end. If you told me what was the stat line of Josh Cuevas, the tight end for Alabama, and Jared Kanik, the tight end for Oklahoma, whoever has the more targets and the more receptions, I think is the team that wins the football game. Isaiah Satenga has taken on over as legit wide receiver 1. He's averaging 6 catches a game, 18.2 yards per catch. He also is averaging 73 yards per game in the air. And he gets open downfield with the explosives. If you are John Mateer, you got to be able, I think, to target him. You got to make sure the defense is kind of corralling the box. You win your one-on-one battles, go for the kill shot down the field and continue to strike. You also need to make sure if you are Oklahoma, you capitalize if you get a turnover. What was the thing that worked in their favor against Tennessee? They were outgained by almost 200 yards. They forced turnovers. They walked away with points. Tate Sandell was able to kick with basically booty shorts on, multiple 50-yard field goals. And guess what? It ended up being the reason why Oklahoma had a lead. It was why Oklahoma was able to kind of pull away. If you're Alabama, you're going to have to trust your passing attack. But this is one of those games where you need to see Ty Simpson kind of get back to what we envisioned before he took on South Carolina. Because Alabama, what was really interesting, if you go back and you watch that LSU game, there were moments where the score could have easily been 30-9 or 38-9. But it was just an overshot throw. Not by much, but like, I don't know, maybe a foot, maybe a yard total, to where you didn't get Ryan Williams the ball. You didn't get Josh Cuevas the ball. You didn't get Jeremy Bernard the ball. But that's now become a thing that's an issue. It's been starting to become an issue for a little bit. Now, the good news is it doesn't lead to a turnover. And that's been kind of Alabama's saving grace, is that South Carolina dropped a couple of interceptions and LSU wasn't able to be in the right place at the right time. Oklahoma's secondary is getting better by the week. And I think that they will end up being in the right place at the right time. If you do not find a way to build that rapport in the passing attack and hit your receivers in stride, you may end up shooting yourself in the foot to where what Oklahoma's going to do is play keep away. And if they can convert on third down and they can win the time of possession and they could be the more efficient team on moving the sticks and having these long, slow-moving drives the way that Georgia does, it could be a low-scoring affair. But honestly, a low-scoring affair really does benefit a team like Oklahoma well more than a high-scoring affair. If it's high-scoring, Alabama's going to win this football game. So a lot of the self-inflicted wounds that maybe showed on up against inferior teams that don't have a lot to play for, South Carolina, LSU, that they're on display against Oklahoma, Oklahoma will feast. You have got to be able to work on those little details, because the little details go a very long way in the process of putting a team in a position to where you feel like that they're built for the college football playoff. And on one hand, remember, guys, this is a playoff clincher for Alabama because they're going to beat Eastern Illinois. That means they will be 10-1 going into Auburn. This is a playoff eliminator for another team in Oklahoma, and they were just in a playoff elimination game. They allowed Tennessee to make the mental mistakes. Those mental mistakes allowed Oklahoma to walk away with a dub.
I wonder, I think it is, but I'm not completely convinced that this is a playoff eliminator for Oklahoma. I think it likely is, but we just saw the committee move Iowa down one spot for losing by 2 against a top 10 team. If Oklahoma loses this game by a field goal or less against a top 4 team, I know it's their third loss, but would the committee maybe say, yeah, that's about what they were supposed to do and move them down to 14 to where just a little bit of chaos ahead of them, and then 2 somewhat still respectable wins. I know LSU has underperformed, but where wins against Missouri and LSU to end the year, and then Texas dropping a couple of games, Miami dropping a game, Utah dropping a game, BYU losing again, would there be enough to where it wouldn't? Now, I think in our next game that Texas is the more likely 9-3 team to get in because one of those 2 wins is going to come against the top 5 team. But I don't know that it is a complete eliminator. I think they're on absolute life support. They're in ICU. They may have a DNR signed. I don't know. But I do think that Oklahoma has a chance at 9-3 if they win big their last 2 weeks and keep this extremely close. That said, I think Bama wins this 27-24 in a game that Oklahoma sticks around in, is able to play pretty well defensively, but I just trust the home team a tad bit more. It really would not shock me to see Oklahoma pull the upset here. I think defensively, this is a nightmare matchup for Bama. And if Oklahoma can run the ball somewhat effectively, then they've got a great chance to win it. Tom, pick on this one?
I'm going to take the under. It's 45.5 right now. I think Oklahoma will come up with some turnovers, but they're going to need multiple. They're just going to need all the right bounces. I've said this for weeks. John Mateer is not healthy. He is not 100%. He's not the guy we were talking about for the Heisman weeks ago, but he does have the weapons that Cole was outlining there. The run game has been nearly absent. And then Ryan Williams, in my opinion, has just been up and down. He can be really special, and then other times the rest of that wide receiver core isn't special enough to elevate things. And Ty Simpson has been very consistent, I think, for that offense. So I'm going to say 24-20, Alabama, them being at home. And to piggyback on your point, TJ, I think if Oklahoma loses this one close and it's competitive, and then they beat Mizzou and LSU to finish the season 9-3, this resume looks a lot better if Michigan beats Ohio State.
Yeah. So just big picture, a 9-3 Oklahoma
does not get in.
Okay.
Just does not get in.
9-3 Texas.
If they win this weekend, gets in.
So I think it's the other way. I think if they lose close to Georgia, I mean, I guess it doesn't really matter. If they lose close to Georgia by 3 on the road, that won't be counted against them. And then if they beat the number 3 team in the country, I think that like a 9-3 Texas versus 10-2 Miami. I think Texas is getting in.
Okay, real fast, so that way we can move on to UJ, and I'll explain my reasoning why. I think that Alabama, this is the game that you brought John Mateer in for. It wasn't for the matchup against Auburn. It wasn't for the matchup against Missouri. It wasn't for the matchup against Tennessee. It was for this game. It was showing that you have the mobility, a better arm, and the capabilities of extending plays outside the pocket to beat up on a team that has all of its goals still ahead of them and being the assassin, being the Grim Reaper. I don't know if it's not that he's not healthy. I just think that there is not enough to where I can trust of what I've seen so far from John Mateer this year to believe that he can go on into Bryant-Denny Stadium and basically be Johnny Manziel circa 2012, because that's what we're going to have to see. And I do think that Tom is 100% right when it comes to the score. It's 24-20 final. Alabama survives. Alabama punches its ticket to the college football playoff. The problem with a team like Oklahoma, not only would you have to win out, which you could, you need to make sure that every single one of your wins is better. So you would need Tennessee to win on out. You would need Michigan to win on out. You would have to have those things benefit you. But also, you would need other chaos things to occur because Michigan would jump you at 10-2. So that's why I just don't think that there's a scenario for Oklahoma to get on in if they lose.
That's a good point. On to UGA in Texas. We'll play our sleeper game here after the before the Lane Bowl. But UGA in Texas. Okay, let's continue on that thought. For Texas, big picture, before we talk about like keys to the game and things like that, Cole.
Okay, so here's the reason why Texas has to win to keep their playoff hopes alive. Where will they fall if, let's say, Vandy keeps winning? So Vandy wins out and they go 10-2. And whether or not you want to say, well, Vandy had
Tom, are you losing Cole a little bit? Cole, we're losing you a bit.
Okay. And they have the same conference record. I look at tennis of where a team like there we go. Welcome back on.
Yeah, you were breaking it out. Just do that whole thing again. It's all
go again.
So, we'll start it from here. So, Texas, if they were to lose this weekend, how far would they fall? I would say probably anywhere to 14 and 15, maybe even further at 16. That means that even if you were to get a win over Arkansas and a win over Texas A&M, other teams in front of you would have to shoot themselves in the foot to help you gain enough traction to get back into the top 12. Now, let's say that you end up beating Georgia this weekend and losing to Texas A&M. Well, if you beat Georgia this weekend, you'd have the same record in terms of head-to-heads. You'd have the same record, and you'd actually have a better conference record than Georgia. Therefore, you would jump ahead of Georgia. And when you play against Texas A&M, if you lose, how far down can they bump you? To what? 11? To what? 10? Okay, but they bump you down to 10. You're still in the playoff hunt. You're still in the playoff picture. It's easier for you to lose to Texas A&M and not fall too far back than to lose to Georgia and gain so much ground where other teams still have to find a way to shoot themselves in the foot in the process. So I think that this is a must-win for Texas because it's easier for the committee to say, we're not punishing you so far because of you were able to keep things close and you're already in the rankings. It's easier to say, well, you're not in the rankings and you won this game, but you only won by a field goal. Texas A&M, maybe they weren't having their best A plus performance. We'll take them out.
I wonder. I think you just have to say never with the committee. But if we ended with a 9-3 Texas that has a top 5 win in their last 3 weeks and a 10-2 Vandy, but you have the head-to-head, would they? And Texas's wins are better. Would you dare put in the 9-3 SEC team that had the head-to-head over the 10-2 team that doesn't have as good of a resume?
Out of curiosity, is Texas still ranked ahead of Vandy when this happens?
So final week. I think that's the thing is, again, how much are they going to punish them for losing either one of these last 2 games? Now, if Texas goes 0-2 in these games, we spent this whole time doing this for who knows what.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think if Texas is, let's say 6, let's say they're 6th after beating Georgia.
Sure.
Okay. Because let's say they don't move them ahead of Texas Tech. So Texas Tech moves up to 5. Everybody else holds serve, like Bama beats Oklahoma.
So they would move ahead of Ole Miss too.
Texas moves ahead of Ole Miss because, well, no, I don't know if they do.
I don't think so.
Because they have 2 losses.
They would move ahead of Georgia because they'd have the head-to-head win, and both would have 2 losses. But still, Georgia would move down to 8.
You move them to 7, right?
Yeah.
Texas at 7.
Georgia 8 or 9.
That's fine. Yep, they drop 4 spots or so, and then Texas loses to A&M that last week. Vandy goes into that.
Would be in the playoff. I mean, Texas would be in the playoff over Vandy.
I think they would, which is crazy that the 9-3 would get in. But can we say they don't deserve it at that point? Like, I would think they still do.
I think that they would deserve it because they would have 2 top. Well, think about this. They would have a head-to-head win over Vandy. They'd have 2 top 10 wins at the time over Georgia and over Oklahoma in the Red River Shootout.
Yeah.
So that would be 2 other top 10 wins. They'd have a loss to the potentially number 1 team in the country in Ohio State, and then a bad loss to Florida.
And Vandy is a great story. Their best win this year is going to be against Tennessee. Like, they don't have another ranked win on the schedule. And I love what they did against Missouri. I love what they did against LSU. Their best win would be a top 20-ish team in Tennessee. If it ends up
I'm going to push back a little bit because if I'm going to say in one hand, we give credit to Oklahoma. Let's say Oklahoma shoots itself in the foot and they crap the bed at the end of the season. Does that win look as promising for Texas if Oklahoma, let's say, loses out? They lose to LSU, they lose to Mizzou, and they lose to Alabama this weekend.
Yeah, I'd be okay docking the Oklahoma win, but you're not going to dock the Georgia win. Because
what I'm saying is that like if we're crediting Texas for that win in Red River, then you have to, I think, at the same time credit the win for a team like Vandy when they played against LSU and they played against Missouri. That's the only way it works.
Yeah, I guess it depends on which way you look. If the games matter more, the committee, and that's the problem with the committee. They do this inconsistently because they do talk about games when they happen, and then they'll also show the graphic wins against current top 25 teams. Yeah. So they do it both ways, and usually just to fit whichever narrative or argument they want to paint at that time.
Right.
It's like holding all the cards and looking at the face of them when you're trying to win a poker game. It's really easy for the committee because they can craft the narrative however they want. I'm fine doing it either way. I do agree with Cole. You just have to do it consistently. If you want to dock the LSU Missouri wins, you got to dock the Oklahoma wins. If you want to give credit to those wins, then you got to give credit to that win. I agree with you. Whichever way you want to do it, you just have to be consistent about it. The committee, though, does not hold to that strategy that Cole and I have.
Either way, though, I still think that if they were at 9-3 and 10-2 and Texas is ranked ahead of Vandy when that appears, Texas is in and Vandy's out. But again, it has to start this weekend. And what's going to be really interesting, in my opinion, is what do we see this weekend showing up? Is it the Texas that set the tone in the first half against Vanderbilt that was able to strike and Arch Manning looked polished and poised and locked on in and Ryan Wingo's blazing down the sideline against Georgia defensive backs and you're seeing the run game be somewhat efficient and the pass protection is great? Is that the version that's going to show on up for Texas? Or is the version of Georgia's defense that allowed an early touchdown to Kamario Taylor and then basically dismantled Mississippi State and kind of put together really.
Oh, there he goes.
I'll let Tom go for a little bit on here. Both have some internet issues.
There you go.
He's back. Go ahead.
They had a slow start against Bama. They had a slow start against Tennessee. They had a slow start against Ole Miss. Defensively, they've had slow starts the entire year. Which one is it? Is my main question at this standpoint. So if one of these two shows on up, either the passing attack and the high tempo offense of Texas, if that's what we see, then I think that this is going to be a really interesting game. If we see the defense that showed on up against Mississippi State, I trust what I've seen so far from Georgia's offense to probably give me enough gusto to make this a low scoring, but promising affair in favor of the Bulldogs and thus knocking Texas out of the playoff conversation.
I think this is a shootout. I think this is another game on Georgia's schedule. It's eerily reminiscent of the Ole Miss game and the Tennessee game for Georgia. They will give up points and yards in the passing game. When you're going up against teams that are not terribly good at running the ball, Tennessee and Ole Miss, you just make them one-dimensional. Georgia's been very good at that so far this year. And Texas has really struggled to consistently run the football. Arch Manning has steadily improved as the season has gone on. I have said this all year. Georgia, outside of the Alabama game, and I think we can say Alabama and Georgia are 1A, 1B, or at least 2A, 2B within the SEC to Texas A&M. Georgia knows how to finish. Georgia delivers body blows. Georgia doesn't back down, especially this game being at home. I think Texas makes it competitive. I would take the over in this. I believe it's 48.5 right now. The spread is in the favor of Georgia by 5.5. I think it's going to be close scoring, just like the Tennessee and the Ole Miss game. But Georgia has proven so far this year that they can hang in these shootouts and they can win. They have that ability to finish. I don't know if Texas does.
I love the phrase, you got to make it a 4-quarter game. And I said this last night when I was reacting to the college football playoff rankings, but I don't know that you have to beat Georgia for all 4 quarters, but you better beat them for the last 2 or 3. Like, that's just what we've learned against Georgia in the last couple of years. Georgia's going to be better. They'll come out and lead 17-0 because I said this. Georgia's going to be better in the 4th quarter of this game than they were in any other quarter. Like, that's just who Georgia is. And sometimes that'll bite them in the butt, and sometimes they'll put themselves behind the 8 ball too much to be able to finish the way they want to. But at the end of the day, I don't know that I trust Texas's consistency, and I do think Georgia's coming into their own. I do think this is a fun game. I think it's 27-21. UGA wins this.
I think that Georgia has been showing you every single week, outside of last week, that they will play with this kind of level of, you know what? It's going to be sloppy. We're going to pull ourselves out of the mud. We're okay being down, but we're never out. And you know what that means, boys? You play with fire. You're playing around with fire. And sometimes you get a little bit too close and you get burnt. Texas finds a way to get the job done, and they finally burn Georgia. Final score, 38-31.
Woo! All the points. I can't wait for this one. Tom, did you give a final score on this already?
No, I don't have a blowtorch available for my, for my presentation here. I wish I'd known. Give me Georgia like 40-35. Like, I just think this is going to be a shootout. It's going to be fun, period.
Burn.
That was incredible. I have no good props. I'm like looking around. I went to my.
Cole's been the king of this. We had the apple cider vinegar earlier on in the season, not a blowtorch.
I have some Tums here, and I almost tried to make like once they're burned, Georgia can rely on but yeah, just nothing there. Let's go to the sleeper game since I can't follow up Cole's performance there. Make sure you use our code CFA on the sleeper app for 100% match up to $100. Marcel Reed, 1.5 passing touchdowns, more or less against that South Carolina defense.
I'll go more. I at this point, I just don't have a lot of faith in South Carolina's defense. Even though their strength is the secondary, I still am just not buying a lot of stock into what they've been able to accomplish this year.
Yeah, I'll go more as well. I like what Reed has done, and he has the weapons to hurt South Carolina, regardless of the success of their secondary.
I'll go less just to be the contrarian. I'll also tell you guys, you probably can't see it because it's so small on the screen. the less has more juice. And so I'm just trying to get a higher payout on this. So the more is what's kind of expected, but I'll go the other way. Arch Manning, more or less 220.5 passing yards against that same UGA team that we were just talking about.
If you want to beat UGA with the score that I have, you better throw for more. So I'll go more.
I will go more because I don't see them running the ball consistently and effectively against Georgia in this game. I think they're going to have to throw it a lot.
I'm going to go more as well. I'll make it a trifecta on this. I think that whether they win or lose, they're going to have to throw quite a bit. And even if they get down by 10 or 12, or 20, 10 or 12, like that's real, 10 or 14, I think they'll have to pass to kind of try and get back in it. So he may not be the most effective. He may not be the most efficient, but they will have to throw quite a bit. Gunnar Stockton, other side of the quarterback matchup, 1.5 passing touchdowns. I'll go first here. I like the more.
I'm going to go less. But I would love to know what his more or less is just for like total touchdowns or touchdowns scored, because I could see him getting a couple with his legs.
I think that the weak point of Texas's defense is its secondary, and therefore the more.
Let's flip over to our second one. Jeremiah Love, 102.5 rushing yards against Pitt. Yeah, sign me up for the more. They give up too many rushing yards against Florida State for me to trust them against a good team. Not that I think FSU is that, but you understand the point. I'll go more.
More barring catastrophic situations and or injuries.
I'll be the contrarian and say less because this is the Jadarian Price game instead. He goes for more.
Ryan Williams, 53.5 receiving yards. Alabama against this Oklahoma defense.
Less. Some weeks he's hot, some weeks he's cold. For as gifted as he is, Ryan Williams is inconsistent. So I will just say less for this game. And I could easily be wrong, and he could get all that in one catch.
That's the thing, is that he could easily, like, he has one catch for 86 yards, and then that'd be it. Here's been a stat line the last 3 weeks. 43 yards, 165 yards. My bad. Let me phrase that. 87 yards, 72 yards, 33 yards. That means that he's probably due for the upper hand. So I will take the more in this game.
I'll take less. Just pure faith in Oklahoma's defense of keeping this not low scoring like 17-13, but closer to my score. I'll go the less. KC Concepcion, more or less 0.5 touchdowns. Just an anytime touchdown for KC against South Carolina.
Does this include special teams? Because if so, I will take the more.
It does. Yep.
Yeah. That is an easy more.
Anything that's not a passing touchdown counts. Which sucks when like KC Concepcion like throws a trick play touchdown this weekend. But if you're pulling out trick plays against South Carolina, maybe it doesn't. Last one, CJ Carr, 1.5 passing touchdowns against Pitt.
I'll say less. I could see him having one, but I think this is a game where it's a heavy dose of the run.
CJ Carr got a massive compliment from the one and only Mr. Tom Brady. Therefore, he is the GOAT because of the GOAT said he was awesome. So I'm going to take the more because if that just means that he's better than everybody else in college football.
I'll go more. I think Pat Narduzzi does not put a secondary on the field in this game. I think he plays with 7 guys, and CJ Carr throws for 14 touchdowns to try and get to that 100.
Remember, the game doesn't matter.
Yeah. No, in all seriousness, I do think he gets more on this. I think Pitt does their very best to limit the run and make CJ Carr beat them. And I think he does. So, all right, we are at 1:00. So we'll go fast on these last 3 games. Lane Kiffin Bowl. How hilarious would it be? I mean, the answer is like a 12,000 out of 10. How hilarious would it be if Florida did beat Lane with all this drama and chaos and stuff going on? I don't know how much Florida will be up for this. Their performance against Kentucky was anything but inspiring. Your Heisman hopeful at the beginning of the year gets benched because he has 3 picks and a fumble, and just obviously Florida is a complete mess right now. It would help them if they could beat Ole Miss and then pray like hell, because then you wouldn't have to wait till after the playoff to go after Lane. But man, I don't have a lot of confidence in UF here, but I think the drama around Lane makes this one a ton of fun this week.
You also have to remind yourself that this is a playoff clincher for Ole Miss because they have a bye week and then they face off against Mississippi State in the Egg Bowl on a Friday afternoon. And I'll tell you what, the last thing you want to do is leave your playoff odds in the hands of a team that may be desperate enough to try and get to bowl eligibility. Because if they don't win this weekend, they also have a bye, and that would be Mississippi State's last chance to get bowl eligible with a massive upset in Starkville. So, yeah, I mean, like, definitely there's a lot of things to wake up for. What's going to be the leash by Billy Gonzalez for DJ Lagway? He's already said that Lagway will be competing this week for first team reps. He didn't say that he would keep him out there. He also didn't say that he would immediately start him. He just said that he is competing. He's working with the ones this week. So what do we see? Is it one interception, one bad play, one fumble that leads to a scoop and score? Is that where Billy Gonzalez says, all right, we're going to the freshman. We're going to 17. He's coming on in here to make a big play for us. Is it we take the ball out of DJ Lagway's hands and we just do what we're supposed to do all season long and hand it to Jason freaking Voorhees wearing number 13 and Jaden run the damn ball? I mean, like, is that what we see? And the other thing is that they're not fully healthy right now when it comes to the wide receiver position, because Trey Wilson, or Eugene Wilson, depending on what you call him, he suffered an ankle injury and now he's having season-ending surgery to pair alongside with Dallas Wilson, who also is out for the rest of the season with a shoulder injury. So what's going to be the overall offensive identity that you think could beat up on Ole Miss? I mean, let's just call a spade a spade. Their run defense has gotten better over the last few weeks, and their pass defense has certainly improved over the last few weeks. I think if you're Florida, you just got to rely on explosive plays, whether that be a couple of deep shots to Vernell Brown or Hayden Hansen or J. Michael Sturdivant, and then some runs up the middle to where Jaden Baugh just bullies over a couple of Rebel defenders and pushes his way into the end zone. I think that that's the game plan that you need to come up with if you want to win this game. And then if you're Ole Miss, I think you got to do two things. Number one, play with tempo. Use this as an advantage to take as much time off the clock and put pressure on Florida to have to go out there and deliver a game where they are nearly perfect on every single drive. And number two, I think you just trust what you got in your ground game. You know, Florida's done a good job of playing in the pass coverage, and they've done a really good job of defending the run. But Keenan Lacey quietly is not getting talked about enough as an All-American running back. He has 16 touchdowns on the year, and you throw in Trinidad Chambliss and his mobility. This should be a game where you say, we're going to run the crap. We're going to basically be Penn State, Michigan with J.J. McCarthy the entire game. We're going to run it and run it and run it until you give us a reason to throw it. And then when we throw it, we got like 5 weapons that are all averaging over 400 receiving yards. We can just go ahead and pick our targets, whether it be Daquan Wright, Caden Lee, Harrison Wallace, Dejon Stribling, Deuce Alexander, and we'll just go ahead and push it on in. I think Ole Miss right now understands how special of a season this has been, because nobody expected this to be the case out in Oxford after what we saw last year. And now they're a game away. They are 4 quarters away, like they were last season, facing off against Florida again from being in the college football playoff. Finish the job and leave no doubt.
Would Lane, Tom, how does Lane call off the Dogs differently in this game? Because that might be where he ends up next year. Like, if they're up 17 in the 4th, does he go for that extra 2 touchdowns? Is, I guess, my point, right? If the backup's in, does he play a little bit differently because he might be wearing those colors next season?
I mean, Lane has shown instances where he'll run up the score. Last year with Jackson Dart, left him in the game late in some games to add a couple points and pad stats just to kind of troll people and send a message. So I think it would help, as a counter to all this smoke surrounding Gainesville. The thing for me about this game, I do think Ole Miss wins this game. Florida's defense is going to create problems. The poison pill that could hurt Ole Miss going into the playoff is a quarterback controversy. And I'm not saying that there is one. Last week against Citadel, you had a get-right situation for Trinidad Chambliss, justifiably so. It's Citadel. Against South Carolina, he's 12 of 21. Against Oklahoma, his completion percentage is hovering around 50%. Against Georgia, hovering around 50%. Austin Simmons is no slouch. What's the likelihood that Florida creates enough problems for Trinidad Chambliss that Lane thinks about or actually pulls the trigger on bringing in Austin Simmons, saying, hey, Trinidad, you're out. We're going back to Austin. And now you got real issues going into the Egg Bowl and into the college football playoff. I don't know if that's a possibility. I don't even know if they're even thinking about that. They might want to continue to ride the hot hand with Chambliss, but I think that decision was kind of easy for them. Simmons was dealing with injuries. Chambliss got hot, and they've been riding it ever since. I think he's kind of come back down to earth, and this is his first opportunity in a couple weeks against a legitimate SEC defense, the Oklahoma game being a great example. This is not better than Oklahoma in terms of defense, but it ain't far off. So that's my only worry really for Ole Miss in this game is the possibility of a lack of confidence in who's the guy at quarterback for Ole Miss. And then also, if Florida wins this game, do they also get Landry, Kiffin, and the entire process? Like, Whit Weeks is going to be furious about this.
Trinidad Chambliss has not played bad. I mean, don't get me wrong. He didn't have an elite game against South Carolina, and it was the Citadel, but he still threw for over 300 yards. I mean, like, no, I don't think that's going to be.
It's Citadel, though. I think the South Carolina game was concerning, and then it had been a couple of weeks after that. I mean, like, was he stellar and breathtaking against Georgia? He was good.
Yeah,
but
no, he was straight all the way up until the fourth quarter, and he had his Jackson moment.
You start to see that this is an FCS quarterback going up to the FBS level, and nobody had any tape on him, and they're starting to get used to what he is capable of. Brent Venables got a good look at him and made it a little shaky. And then South Carolina, for some reason, he wasn't his best. I really throw the Citadel game out. Like, you can point to that as a data point all you want, but it's freaking Citadel. This is a good defense in Florida, and they have not quit all season, despite all the issues surrounding the program. So I'm not saying that's going to happen. I think Trinidad Chambliss has a lot of success in front of him, but the one thing that could hurt Ole Miss going into the playoff is some sort of question at quarterback.
I'm not letting you talk mad smack about my Trinidadius Chambliss bad daddy. I'm not letting you do that. I'm not letting that Ferris State Bulldog mentality be ridiculed on this game. In fact, I'm going to go as far to say that not only does Texas and Ole Miss win this game 38-17, I think in the press conference afterwards, Lane Kiffin takes the podium and goes, "What, you really think I'm going to that school? I'm locked into the locker. I already saw my."
It's going to go full Wolf of Wall Street. Yeah.
He's 2 steps ahead of everybody. He retweeted on Sunday, DJ Lagway is benched in the game. You think for 1 second he hasn't already had the conversation about the extension being signed? Come on. He's locked in.
Ole Miss wins this, makes me really happy on Saturday. They roll 38-13. We'll get real disrespectful with it.
We'll get real disrespectful with it. Give me 42-17.
Very good. Cole, did you do a score on this one already?
Yeah, 38-17.
Oh, cool. Is that what I had? No, I had 13. All right, good. Mm-hmm. All right, on to quickly on these last two. Duke, Virginia. The scenario that exists where Duke does not, like, where a team from the ACC, like, that's what I'm cheering for. Like, up 1,000% cheering for. So, higher review. I think people are watching it at this point. They know. But higher review, if it's the 5 high, for the Miami fans that don't understand how this thing works, let me help a little bit. They put you in last night in the graphic because nobody knows who the hell is actually winning the ACC this year. It's not the highest ranked team in a conference. It is the conference champion. Because we don't know who's winning the ACC, they just put the highest ranked team in. If the season ended today and the ACC could not hold a conference championship game, I have confirmed that Georgia Tech would make it because right now they are first in the ACC. They would be declared the ACC champions and they would go to the college football playoff despite the fact that they're 1 spot behind Miami. Miami right now is 7th in the conference. They need an insane amount of chaos for them to even make it to Charlotte. Miami's best chance is to go 10-2 and somehow get in as the last auto bid. Number 10 would be the only spot they could get unless just massive amounts of chaos happens and teams way higher end up losing too. Miami's spot is only happening that way. Because it is the 5 highest ranked conference champions, if Duke was to somehow win, which do we have a status on Chandler Morris? I'll ask in a second. If Duke was to somehow win the ACC, I guess there's a chance they could end up ranked higher than a James Madison if JMU drops a game. But in all likelihood, you would have like USF and James Madison being your next 2 conference champions, and the ACC would be left out of the playoff. Now, I don't think that happens. I do think Georgia Tech goes and probably ends up winning this thing. But the fact that we are 2 weeks away from the end of the season, And that is a realistic, or I guess 3 weeks away from the end of the season. And that's a realistic possibility. Is hilarious. But for it to happen, I hope you're all fighting Duke Blue Devils this weekend, because I am cheering for that scenario and I would like to see them win. All that said, what is the status on Morris? Is he back?
He
Where
practiced yesterday. They don't have a full-on official report, but they are hopeful he will play in this game.
I bet he plays.
Oh,
but if he doesn't, boy, oh boy.
If he doesn't, Duke is going to beat the brakes off of
Virginia. Yeah, because they can score.
Because, like, again,
they can score.
Like, okay, so here's the thing that you need to know about Duke. Duke is a top 20 scoring offense in the country. Duke is a top 4 passing offense in the country. They're a top 10 total offense in the country. They're a top 30 run offense in the country. They are also bottom 25 defensively in every single metric. They are not good defensively. They are terrible defensively. They allowed UConn to fight its way back, and thankfully I had a 5-leg parlay, and I took the over in that game. So it ended up hitting. Actually offensively has been really good when Darian Mensah doesn't turn the football over. So my main question is going to be, does he turn the football over? Do we see Darian Mensah throw into double coverage? Do we see him fumble the ball, trying to make a play outside the pocket? And does Virginia capitalize? If Virginia doesn't do those things to put pressure on Mensah, he has been so good when it comes to connecting with his receivers that we can kind of look away from the turnovers and simply look. He's the Taylen Green of the ACC. Like, so many good things about him that you just are flabbergastedly wowed by, and so many negatives that end up hurting his team and why they're sitting with 4 losses. But that's going to be the key of this game. Can you put Darian Mensah in a position where he is having 3 to 4 turnovers and it's just, it goes from bad to worse?
Tom, do you have any thoughts on this one?
This game makes me think about George Costanza and getting out of the pool, and things just feel not as great as they maybe were before. And that's just kind of what the ACC was this past weekend. Is like, it's new names or something like that, and then all of a sudden Louisville and Virginia just fell off a cliff. And now going into this game, my interest in this is so low, so shriveled, so very, very small. And this conversation about the ACC is so exhausting because so many of these teams are just mid. And at the same time, these college football playoff rankings are the most useless, biggest waste of time week to week. Everybody freaks out. Oh, Miami's in there. The season's not over yet. We still have all this time to go. It doesn't matter what we just put out last night. This is all going to change. To the points that Cole just said, if Mensah can live up to the roughly alleged $3 million he was paid by Duke and not turn the ball over, they should be fine. But when you hear about a guy practicing and being hopeful midweek, that sounds like a dude who's going to give it a go and try. And that doesn't necessarily lend Morris to have his usual magic, which he can do. And he's a dynamic quarterback. But if he's a little bit banged up and he's not his usual self and he's not playing that 100% full bore, going to the backup's not going to be pretty for Virginia.
I'm riding with the Dukies. I'm riding with the Blue Devils to win this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Give me... Dude, the ACC is so ugly. 26 to 17.
Like 24 to 12. I don't know. It's a weird, ugly ACC score.
Screw it. I'll be the giant asshole here, and I'll just say, Duke, show me why Darian Mensah is a top 10 quarterback, because I believe he is a top 10 quarterback in college football. I'll go 45 to 20 final score. Blue Devils.
Get on it. So one less point than their performance against Clemson.
Yep.
And then we'll wrap up with the Big 12. We talked about shrinkage, so now we're talking about wrapping it up. BYU and TCU. Last year, BYU finally lost a game after starting out so hot, and then they lost another one. Is there a carryover effect for how they looked against Texas Tech last week, which ultimately was just not very good? Thoughts on this game, Cole?
How quickly can you respond against a team that is basically unraveling in front of our very eyeballs? Like, we got to remind ourselves, TCU had the game won last week, and then they didn't. And then they found a way to let Iowa State back in this matchup, and it was disgusting. And we're getting to a point of where, as a native Texan who understands what the expectations are at a place like TCU, Sonny Dykes has bought himself a lot of good equity because he took his team to a national championship in year one when he had Max Duggan as a starting quarterback. You don't lose the way that you did last week and live telltale efficiently because you're nowhere near the top 25, but a way to be able to get people off of your back and prove that you still have the program heading in the right direction with a good offensive identity and a good overall personality when it comes to the offensive line and the defense has turned the corner, is by beating up on a team that maybe we overhyped a little bit when it came to BYU. BYU's blessing right now is that they can't be behind Utah because of the head-to-head win and because they have a better record than them. But I'll be completely real. I think that personally, Utah is the more complete team that I would trust on a neutral site, even though that we had the Holy War be played. And yeah, we can call a spade a spade. The Holy War, again, is the ultimate test because of, well, wasn't the game at Lavelle Edwards Stadium? Yeah, it was. So what if this was on a neutral site field? Do we maybe see Utah find a way to fix a few things, get a couple of stuff cleaned up, and they end up not losing by 3? So that's TCU's plan. Can you slow down Bear Bachmeier? Can you find a good way of being able to take away LJ Martin in the rushing attack? Can you basically do what Texas Tech did last week defensively and make them have to live in punting formations? If this becomes a shootout game, I don't trust TCU because TCU has just shown me too many times that they shoot themselves in the foot. But if this can be a low-scoring affair and you just need to get a few big-time shots to Eric McAllister downfield, I do think that TCU can go on into Lavelle Edwards and find a way to win.
Tom, do you have a score or any thoughts on this one?
That was a demoralizing loss against Texas Tech, and Texas Tech could have won that game by a lot more. I think it was 29-7. So I think this is a chance for BYU to get right. You're at Cincinnati next week, and you can't afford to look ahead to that at all. You have to treat this game as let's get back to being BYU. Having this at home, I think, is a good advantage. I like BYU in this one, but I think it's going to be competitive because all TCU's wins are against like the middle of the pack of the Big 12. And at the same time, same story with BYU. So I don't think the gap is significant, but BYU is dealing with the bigger emotional letdown, I would say. The loss last week to Iowa State, not as big of a deal for TCU to get back up from. So I think this will be competitive. I'm not sure what the spread is. Let me take a look. It's 4.5 in the favor of BYU. I'll take BYU to cover on that one. It's 52.5 for the over-under. Give me 35-21.
I hate being this guy. I don't. I really don't. I have not believed in BYU at all this year. And I don't really care what anybody wants to say about like, oh, well, look at what they've done. They've only lost one game. What's their most convincing win? It's probably against Iowa State. I was not high on Iowa State going into this season. But what about the Utah game? Okay, you fought back against Utah in your backyard, and you need to come back in a complete and total implosion to lose that game. I also think that when you look at the West Virginia game, yeah, you fought back and you won, but let's be real. Is that your best win? I'm taking BYU to win, but I'll tell you what, it's not going to be pretty. I think it's something like 24-21. And once again, we continuously say BYU going up against inferior competition is why they are actually being boosted up in the rankings.
I think I like BYU to win too, but I'm not super sold. I'm not super convinced. I actually think this is really close. I think BYU and TCU play this. I like the over. I think they play it super competitively. 34-31, BYU gets it done. That's our show for the day. We went a little long. We started a little late. We have really good off-season content coming for you. And so make sure you're subscribed because you're not going to want to miss February. There's a lot to go on. Listen, we haven't had the chaos week yet in college football. And that might not be this week. It might be next week. It might be the week after. But, man, I do think that it sets up to be a really good finish. And I think we'll have a lot to talk about. TJ Pittinger, Tom Hannifan, Cole Thompson. We will see you guys on Monday. Thanks for tuning in to The Power 2.